So yeah, I'm Renata, as Rachel said. So I work at Klaviyo, not Klevu. I know, very similar names. It's confusing, but it's Klaviyo. And I've been at Klaviyo now for probably like 6 or 7 months. And I'm responsible for the post-sales experience. So anything after the sales is done, customer success, launch engineers, professional services, anything on that post-sales experience here in EMEA, it's under our team's responsibility. Thanks for inviting me.
No problem. And what is your what in your opinion is the most useful application of AI personally to you?
The way that I think about this is kind of like how AI has been evolving over time. So when we think back, of course, it's now a buzzword and we're kind of like bored about this because everybody's talking about it, but it's been there for a while. So when we think about AI as a predictive tool, it's been there for a while. And this is where I think it's probably the one that I get most excited, especially being a CS leader. Like, how do you actually use data, use AI to predict customer behavior, to kind of like understand what's next for them? And it could be like, as a CS leader again, like what's the churn probability? What's their next step? What's customer lifetime value? So how do we really use data to leverage and predict the next behavior for a customer? This is probably where I'm most excited about.
Absolutely. Ross?
Yeah, cool. So Ross, Growth Director at Pangaia. I've been there for just under a year. Previous history with a load of other high-end boutique brands, watches, jewellery, outerwear, a few you may know, Fruit Art, Vervaunt, MV, that kind of thing. So doing board advisory through a private equity firm. I was also at Loki, the trainer brand, which some of you may have heard of if you're based in London. I guess my take on AI is probably more how do you use it for omni-channel experiences. So we were literally just talking about this before. How you actually predict customer behavior from direct to consumer, wholesale and bricks and mortar retail, and how you personalize experiences for them. The other side of AI, I guess, that we're using at the minute is predictive search discovery. So like things for how we merchandise our website, how we prioritize SEO, and how we look at customer trends in terms of what products we make. So we're sort of leveraging it in quite a lot of different ways at the minute, which I'm sure we'll go into a little bit later.
Yeah, that's all very interesting. I'm not going to pick into it right now, but we will pick into it later. Yeah. Liam.
Hi. Yeah, I'm Liam, Technical Director at Vervaunt. So yeah, I've done a lot in the AI space, both like on the client side, we've done a few different projects and things with clients, and then internally at Vervaunt, we've done a lot between like products that we've built and just dabbling for finding out what's interesting. I think personally, right now, my interest in use is the dev sort of co-pilot stuff. So there's a couple that are getting really good, and I think that'll have a big impact in the space very soon. And then I think merchant-wise, probably still data analysis, big data analysis and insights from large amounts of data that was more than people have time to sort of properly analyze otherwise.
Absolutely. So some themes are emerging. We've got, what's the customer doing? How is it kind of, helping the business from an omni-channel perspective and also front-end revenue driving perspective, DevOps. Ben, what's your view?
Well, so hi, I'm Ben. I'm leading the Northern Europe partnership team at Shopify. I've been at Shopify for the last 2 years, enjoying the ride, and Shopify is investing heavily in AI. So I think historically we had two sides of AI, right? We have generative AI that was more in the content creation, product description, things like that. And we already have a lot of tools that are implemented that could definitely help on solving some of the time-consuming tasks on creating content, for instance, or generating images. And you have a second side of AI that is more the conversational AI, right? How do we empower, for instance, customer support with chatbots, things like that. So that's the historical usage, I would say, of AI. What I'm super excited about is see the conjunction between the two, actually, where we will have, in my opinion, great strategic AI assistant that will help you to take the right decisions based on both generative AI and conversational AI. So I think that's the part that I'm quite excited about, because it will help reduce a lot of operational tasks by taking the right decisions in a faster time to market. We know that microeconomics is a bit complex, right? So being able to be time to market with the right tools, I think is super important currently. So I think those elements combined will create like great strategic assistance tomorrow.
Absolutely. So, I mean, there's so many applications, and I'm sure everyone in the room is thinking about how can we augment our strategy using AI. So how should brands approach the process of integrating AI into their tech stack as part of a long-term roadmap? Liam?
Yeah, I think we were briefly talking about it before. I think firstly there needs to be, I think there's a shift to like being agile and like experimental as a culture within a merchant, and I think that's really important to actually push the boundaries and get the most out of AI and get the benefits. I think there needs to be like a culture of being experimental and not everything will work, but moving quickly and learning. I think we historically over the last 5 years we've done a lot of like tech validation and roadmap sides where merchants will be inclined to like say what's the 3-year view and make decisions on tech where they don't have to change for 3 to 5 years, which is obviously important for like platforms or some of the bigger parts of the tech stack. But day to day, I think it needs to be more experimental. And then second to that, I think probably avoiding like the shiniest new thing. From a merchant point of view, I like that side, but from a merchant point of view, I think probably avoiding that, looking at where the biggest amounts of like human time is being sunk into, resources being sunk into, and like prioritizing just one by one, how can we use AI on this section to like streamline, make things more efficient. Yeah, as a process, I think working through it that way is probably the way to go.
I guess that can be kind of scary for brands, especially big brands, to be experimental. Like, Ross, what's your opinion? Like, how have you been able to experiment and, you know, in your career so far and also at Pangaia?
Yeah, I think my journey with AI maybe started about 4 years ago when they started like actually trialing ChatGPT, using it for copywriting, the more generative side that Ben said. So very much trying to like teach it how to speak like the brand. I was at Fruit Arc at the time. We had 2 co-founders that were ex-Special Forces soldiers. They had a very particular tone of voice, and trying to teach an AI how to do that, to move a bit faster in terms of comms, in terms of how we go to market with products and the whole sort of channel mix was quite interesting. I think now at Pangaia, we do very much what Liam says. We don't use anything that's sort of new to market so much because it's a huge risk, especially as a big brand. And we've kind of learned our lessons a couple of times of using it for SEO, for example, and finding that actually it's maybe not got the cut through that you think that it will. Not so much from like a plagiarize sort of side away, but actually more in terms of like generating content that isn't actually as savvy as what you first read it as. So actually having that human touch is still needed at the moment. But I think finding that balance with something like SEO, for example, is really key. The areas we have found it really useful in, like I said earlier, is in trends. So like actually like using tools like Glimpse, which was actually a Vervaunt recommendation to us from their ecom team, where we started actually predicting behavior of customers going forward, actually pinpointing words and then letting Glimpse predict the actual trajectory of that particular term. So like a huge fashion trend at the minute is like white baggy trousers, right? So that's like a thing mainly in the sort of more feminine space. But what we started to do is actually create personalized journeys with white baggy trousers heavily merchandised, and it's actually helped to see an uplift in sales, especially from that category. So we are using a lot of predictive sides of it at the moment rather than generative. Generative's sort of quite human touch in Pangaia. But I think, we'll start to trial it a little bit more. We've also been working with a tool called Jasper, which is basically like more of a marketing focused content producer. And we've been training that from like brands that we love, the founder's tone of voice and what she likes and words she says, and getting her to speak into sort of like a microphone when we're having meetings, when she's presenting things to us, and actually teaching that to speak in the right tone.
Yeah. Glimpse, is that like on the search marketing side?
So you tag it on as a Chrome app to Google Trends. So, and then it does the predictive side of it. So you can tag words. So say, for example, if it's like white baggy trousers, we can monitor the trend of it throughout the course of time. We can see previous uplift, but we can also see predictive uplift based off like previous years.
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
And then I know that you've also just recently integrated with Klevu, like which is also a search app on your website.
Yeah.
Are you doing anything to kind of like put the insights from Glimpse then into your search merchandising or utilizing? Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, especially from like a key opinion leader perspective. So like if there's a certain key opinion leader that's wearing a certain product, actually having Glimpse feed into those trends and monitoring that. And say, for example, in 2020, we had like Kardashians, Justin Bieber wearing Pangaia, you know, people who are maybe seeing those older articles, searching for that particular color of jumper, or if we don't have that color of jumper, actually directing them to the most recent thing that's similar. So we are using that data pretty monumentally in terms of our strategy. Klevu, we've only literally just started with you guys, but like a lot of that data that's coming in already, we're finding that it's picking up some of that just from generally sort of the AI that you integrate with anyway. We had a bit of a weird journey with it. We were in graphene and then we went to search and discovery just to sort of flatten things, and now we're with Klevu. We're sort of seeing that uptick in that. The other thing we have is quite a lot of press around a charity we work with called Be The Change, which is very heavily endorsed by celebrities. The products sell really well. We have huge amounts of searches for it on our website, and we're actually trying to sort of like combat that when we don't have the products anymore with Klevu search. So.
Got it. Interesting. And Ben, so what advice would you give to brands kind of just starting out on their AI journey? How can they build AI into their e-commerce platforms from the commerce point of view?
So, well, I think if we take it from a consumer standpoint, what we saw on like a few studies that we ran lately is that 2/3 of the consumer are expecting now to have customer experiences that are AI powered. So there is already in the market like expectations, right, that are coming our way. But in the meantime, we're seeing that just 1/3 of the brands, retailers, are planning on investing or are investing into AI. So you already see some kind of a gap that is starting to create between expectation and potentially the fears that brands are having on launching into AI, right? You know, Pangaia is more forefront than most, and that's great. But we see that as being potentially one issue, because one of the underlying fears is to remove the human touch point, you know, is having a robotic kind of experience that is not in brand. And Ross said exactly that, you know, previously on how do we train AI. So I think it's just first step is to get a better understanding of AI, right? What it can do, what it can't do, right? Because we're hearing a lot, but let's not stay on the fear of what it could bring, right? I think we all had potentially a lot of excitement around blockchain, you know, a few years back, and everyone was thinking, oh, it's going to be amazing, but we didn't see what will be the impact in our day-to-day life. AI is going to transform, if not already, all the different industries that we have around us. So it's definitely something we have to take into consideration. And the first step is definitely by understanding what it can bring on your day-to-day, right? Is it just like improving your small operational tasks? Yeah, let's try by that, right? Let's start by that, let's experiment, let's build on that. Is it just by creating content and just trying to, you know, learn through that? I think that first step is super key. I don't know for you, but every day I'm allocating 15 minutes just to chat with ChatGPT myself. Like, it's stupid, I know, but it's just about getting a sense on how to prompt, how to better use that, how to understand the logic of the system. You know, so that first part I think is fairly key. And then there is a second element that is, for me, super important, is surround yourself by folks that are more expert on that topic. At Shopify, we're lucky enough to have amazing partners, some that are in the room, that have great knowledge around AI. Like, leverage them, talk to each other, you know, so because that's through this kind of conversations, through the community, that you'll be able to see, well, actually what was said, something I want to try. You know, potentially AI will help me to redesign my floor plan on my store. How can I use that? Because I see that it's not potentially as efficient as it could be. Or my customer support needs to be optimized. How I can do that? You know, what are the tools? Any recommendations? So, like, I think the community aspects, after removing potentially the fear around AI, those are two steps that I feel are quite important to take.
Yeah. I just had an interesting thought, which is about, like, you know, now we see advertising and you have to, by law, say that this is sponsored or this is an ad. Like, what is your view on kind of AI personalization, like on a website, or, you know, how transparent must we be as e-commerce professionals to tell our consumers when AI is being used? Renata,
That's a great point. I do think that there are two sides of this. There is the data, like, that we're capturing. So absolutely, we need to be very transparent. Like, what kind of data are we collecting? How are we storing it? How are we using it? Yeah. How does that transform the experience that you're going to have with me? So this is like non-negotiable when we have laws for this, and it's like that's very clear. So we need to be very transparent to the data that we're collecting, how we're using, how we're transforming this. That's one piece. And then the second piece is the experience that we're providing, right? So if you think of like personalization through email or campaigns, there is like the interaction with the customer. They will understand that this is coming out of like a system or a machine that is personalizing the experience. But as a customer success leader, when you're talking to a chat, you need to be very clear that the experience that they're having there, you cannot fake humans. You cannot pretend that there is a human behind it if you're kind of like doing this through a machine. So like, I think every brand, when you're like experimenting with this, there is this question that you guys are gonna need to ask yourself, saying like, how am I clear with my customers that I'm actually providing this experience through this, and what's the tipping point that they actually get like a human interaction, and like when do I change this? And they need to be very aware of this. We want to use this to like optimize, we want to use this to accelerate, we want to use this to create efficiency, but there is a point that you're going to change this experience, and then you say, now you're talking to a human. And I think everyone kind of like deserves to understand this experience and what they're getting, and we need to be very transparent with this. So both like data and the experience that we're providing. I've read it once and I thought it was like amazing. We don't fake money, so we cannot fake humans. We cannot just pretend that there is some machine behind it that is pretending to be a human. So everyone kind of like deserve to understand who are they interacting with, what's behind that, like what's the framework behind this that is creating that experience for me. So, and yeah, that's my opinion on this one.
Yeah, and I guess you can pull that into like your branding strategy as well, like making sure that you're open and transparent, and like that you bring the customer along on the journey with you about what you're providing and how you're using AI. That's really interesting. Anyone else have any thoughts on this matter?
Yeah, I guess I would say like, I think personalizing's been like machine-led for years, whether it's AI or whether it's like cookie-based or session-based, or we're like tagging information about customers and like using Shopify Flow to automate things around. Like it's been machine-led all the time. It's just a different way of being machine-led. So I think I don't think obviously some of them are quite obvious where it's lying to, if you don't want to lie to customers, but I don't think that you explicitly need to sort of make out that this is AI powered rather than.
I agree with that.
Else.
Yeah, I was talking to the team before we jumped on here about personalization from an omni-channel perspective. So we use wallet passes in our store to basically scan the customer, find out who they are, find out their loyalty tier, find out what they've viewed on site, what they've purchased previously, what size they are, and all this kind of information. When it's helpful to the customer and it's providing a better quality of experience to the customer, I think you shouldn't have to explicitly say that, because I think that's actually providing the customer with a time-saving exercise rather than it sort of being something that's going to hinder them or make them feel intruded on. I think that's the time when you can let AI take over and you can let that side of things perform. But I think there's other times where things become a bit Big Brother moment and you need to probably explicitly say it, which I think is something that, obviously I name dropped Amazon then, but for years they've been collecting data through Alexas, through smartphones, and I think people have been very unaware of it. And for example, you'll say something in a conversation to your partner and then all of a sudden it will show up on your Meta ad, for example, and that's your Amazon Alexa in the corner listening to you and what you're talking about, which is good in some respects, but it's also bad. So I think there's elements where if you read through the Amazon privacy policy, they do explicitly say this, but ultimately it's not so in the customer's face that they feel intruded on. So I think there's got to be a balance of both when it benefits the customer.
Yeah, so it's about the when it was collected, how that customer was told how their data would be used, and if that's not clear enough, then yeah, maybe you need to be more explicit.
You have as well like an element that is how what is customer facing and what is supporting the entrepreneur, or the business owner, and I think those are two sides as well, right? So the things that are saving you time on the day-to-day are not things that you really have to mention or be public about. If you have content that is created faster, or plan to reorder, or draft that is created automatically, that's a big side of how we make the life of entrepreneurs easier, right? So I think you also have that side also of AI that is not just customer facing, but like creating efficiency from a business owner standpoint. I think that's also important there.
Yeah, I think from our side as well is like with inventory forecasting, for example, and the AI around that surrounds that nowadays, is actually it will allow you to be less overconsumptive in like the fashion industry or any kind of fast-moving consumer goods, and actually predict what customers are buying. That's going to aid the customer experience in terms of having what they need, but also it's going to stop customers from over-consuming in areas where maybe they shouldn't. So discounts, for example, all brands struggle with discounts against wholesalers, against concessions, or however they're doing their strategy. But and it's something we've struggled with as a brand. But now we're trying to be a little bit more over-consumptive and start to really focus in on how we forecast inventory using AI.
That's really good.
Yeah. So Ross, you've talked about a bit about like using AI for personalization, search and merchandising on your website with the help of Klevu recently, but you also you mentioned the omni-channel side with the stores. Can you talk a little bit more about that and how you're utilizing AI there?
So one thing we've changed as a business, and a lot of businesses are changing, is actually moving more to an omni-channel strategy. So rather than being D2C, wholesale, bricks and mortar, and all the strategies are separate, all the teams are separate, we're really trying to align our teams internally to actually work together. So everything, mainly myself and head of development, Camille, just stood in the corner over there, are working on with Pangaia is actually to unify the teams and make sure that we all have touch points with one another. So I think I mentioned earlier, like wallet passes, right? So for example, the data that we pick up in store through proof of presence and analysis, and what customers are saying in terms of feedback, will directly correlate to the experience that they have online through personalization. So that can come from the VM, that can come from the smart search, that can come from what recommendations they receive in pop-ups. So we use like Intently for pop-ups, and if there's certain products that they've seen that are out of stock, they'll immediately receive that when they come on site. So it is a bit big brother moment for us, but I think ultimately if it's aiding the customer experience, making it quicker for them to check out or making it quicker for them to find what they're having, I think as long as it's stated in our privacy policy, I don't really feel like there's anything more that you can do than that at this point. And I think you're using it to benefit the customer rather than using it to hinder the customer. So,
yeah. We recently ran a survey with YouGov, the consumer survey company, asking shoppers kind of what they wanted from e-commerce experiences. And one of the questions was around like, do you want the website to dynamically change based on your preferences, or do you want personalized experiences? And a lot of the shoppers actually said like no, because I think they're worried about the implications of what that means for them. And the simple question, it was very loaded for them. But we also did a merchant survey saying like, do you want to offer this, and do your shoppers want it? And the merchant said yes, and that kind of makes sense to me. But you have to do it in such a way that is helpful and that is transparent.
Yeah, and like Renata said, it's like you've got to give the customer the opportunity to opt out, and obviously consent is like a huge thing at the minute across everything. Giving the customer to consent or not to receive those cookies to give them that personalized experience is something that every brand now has to do. So I don't really feel like there's anything else we can do than what we're already doing, kind of thing. Because if you're offering the opportunity to accept or reject, and they reject and they don't receive a personalized experience, but they don't have a better shopping experience because of that, it's the customer's choice.
Yeah, absolutely.
Down the line, it's about leveraging the data that is already existing. So you already have that data, so better make use of that, because you already accepted the fact that you're consenting, right? So it's how do we leverage that to create a better experience that is creating value? And I think we're like the decade that is coming is going to accelerate. We thought it was going fast on the last decade, but it's going to be even faster in the next one. And AI is going to play an important role there. And indeed, you'll have resistance, good ones, right? But when people will start to see the impact that it has on their customer journey, on their loyalty to one brand, say, well, I'm a fan of Pangaia because actually they know when I'm entering the store that I've checked that T-shirt yesterday and I really love that because I already have it and I spend less time with them, and the experience with the guest in the shop is amazing. And slowly they'll be like, yeah, well, I see the value added for me, and then it will enhance more and more of those experiences. So that data is already there. So it's how do we use it? And AI is a great way to, digest data actually and make it actionable.
Makes it emotive as well, I guess, to Ben's point. So I think that's really important.
And I think it comes down to like the brand, your intention as well as a brand. Like if your intention is actually just to give a really great experience, then you're going to achieve that. If your intention is to get quick money and more conversion and like move this e-commerce metric, then that becomes like a more superficial intention. So it's kind of about like
100%.
being ethical and like coming down to your brand values. I think we're running out of time on this panel, but who was it? Yeah, Liam, I just wanted to talk to you about like, what are some, because you guys have built some really cool apps recently and like installed lots of cool apps on your customer sites and like using AI in like very ring-fenced, interesting ways. Can you talk a little bit about what you guys have done?
Yeah, I guess there was like two examples. So one census that we built is a customer surveys app that we use on a lot of brands. But that we use AI, so we've got merchants that will collect like 20,000 responses a month from like customer surveys, which is far too many for their team to read through and do anything with. And it's like probably years ago, everyone used Hotjar, did the same thing, and you'd look at 1 or 2 responses and that was it. So we use AI and basically like do sentiment analysis across it all, like categorize everything and then give insights based on all that on like what changes could be actioned on the store to improve some of the issues and things like that. And I think that so merchants can literally use that without having to look through all the responses themselves and actually get value out of it. I think that's like the direction of some useful operational AI. And then one brand I was going to talk about, which it's not done really well, but Adore Me is like it's like swimwear and underwear and stuff, but they use generative AI. It was the first example that I've seen where it's like you can use generative AI to literally like create whatever design for like swimwear, bikinis that you want, and then they turn that into the physical product. And I think that is it's not done really well, but it's pretty good. But but I think that's an example of where like the direction where things could go in terms of like utilizing AI on more interesting ways for the end user.
Totally, that's very creative. And Ross, what in terms of like operational efficiency do you think AI has done for your team so far? What do you think it's going to do in the future?
Yeah, I'll probably say more agile teams, obviously. It's allowed us to probably scale down our team a little bit, just in terms of having people that are maybe more driven in certain areas. The other thing it's allowed us to do is be a little bit more agile in terms of research. So actually like when we're trying to actually research and develop something, we can use generative AI to actually like do that piece and crawl the internet for us and reel it off. In terms of summaries and action points within meetings, sort of making really clear actions. We use an AI tool called Spinach in all of our meetings, which basically brings all of the information in, puts it into key points, assigns owners to it, and then we can create tickets with a Monday.com to basically assign that to a particular owner. So it just allows for that more sort of like agile working space rather than before it would be probably have someone taking meeting notes, then you have to have a debrief, and then you have to have internal team meetings. It's actually just filtering it all out really easily. So I'd probably say that's the main thing that it's doing for us operationally, is allowing for a more agile team. It's also allowing for probably more inexperienced team members to have better knowledge much faster, because if they have a question, they can ask generative AI. They can then come to like people who, line managers or different heads of departments to ask them the questions and check that information. So yeah, definitely think it's aiding us in terms of more agility for sure.
I'm going to check out Spinach. That sounds amazing. Yeah, really cool. I know there's like pitfalls that you can come across, challenges. Can everyone kind of quick fire a bit of like, what are the common pitfalls that you could experience as a brand when coming into including AI into your strategy?
I would say that probably the most important one is the data that you're using. So AI is all about data, right? So how we're consuming that information, how we're using it. If you have bad data, if you have like and it could be either like I'm using like way too many years behind, or I'm just using just a little, so it's not going to work. So just make sure that you have that information, making sure that you're like working in the right amount of data that you need. I think that's probably the first one. And then second pitfall is just like, don't try to do it all at the same time. Just like pick up your things. What are the problems that you're trying to solve now? Am I trying to use Gen AI to generate efficiency, or am I trying to personalize? Just like go and tackle the problems once at a time. Probably that's
Yeah, I think an exercise for us that myself and Camille have been working on recently is actually mapping out our tech stack, mapping out our pain points across the whole commercial team within Pangaia, and saying where can we use AI to pinpoint areas that we can be more efficient in. So that might be things like writing scripts or like, meetings, for example, making meetings more productive, making them shorter, that kind of thing. The other thing I'd say is kind of like what Renata said, don't be too reliant on it, I guess. Always check it with someone, make sure, like I said, SEO is a key thing that a lot of brands will just absolutely hammer SEO. They'll get a load of blogs written by AI and then they'll find that there's plagiarized content in them, or they'll find that there's issues with keywords or the way they're spelt in different territories. So I think there's a lot to be said about it still, and I think Ben sort of alluded to that point, that the fact that it's not 100% there yet. We're probably 85% there in terms of its usage. And I think image AI is another thing that some brands are relying on now, which is probably not quite there yet, and it's quite confusing for customers when they see these generated images, especially when it comes to like PDP shots and pack shots of products. So.
Yeah, that we could probably talk more about that in a longer discussion. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think the biggest pitfall that I see is like somebody not knowing what they want to achieve and then hoping that AI will achieve it. So it's like, I don't know what the end result is, but hopefully AI will do something that is good, which is ideally like you're the boss still and you're trying to get AI to do the executing. So it's like you should know what the end result is, be really clear on what you want to achieve, and then from there, then you'll have good results through AI. Otherwise it'll be, the more vague you are or the more you don't know what you want to achieve, the less good results you'll get anyway.
I think that's good life advice in general.
Yeah.
Ben?
Well, just to build on the point of Renata, I think AI is based on machine learning. Machine learning is based on data. So if you don't have the right data, AI would not work as well as it should, right? So I'd say like understanding your data and having the tools that are allowing you to unify all the data points you have. Shopify is great for that, intended there. But like having your different channels that are connected to one point that is gathering the data, that's like such an important key to be able to leverage data and then leverage AI, right? So if you have a scattered system with a lot of different technologies around, it will be harder to create a cohesive data set that will be the source of your AI impact. So I think data is key there. And one big pitfall is not using it. I think honestly now it's, if you like it or not, but the next decade is about AI. And we're talking a lot about it. It's for a reason. It's going to transform our day-to-day life from our kids' life to our business life to our personal lives. So it's quite important to embrace it and understand it. So.
I think merchants have been like we've all been obsessed with collecting data for the last 5 years. Yeah. And now it's like, now's the chance to use it.
Yeah.
Amazing. Does anyone in the audience have questions? We have time for maybe one or two.
Does anyone have any experience about AI and translation into different languages?
Yeah, I have. Yeah, I can shoot that. So we're actually testing using that within our PIM for our product descriptions. Something that we're going to roll out over the next sort of 3-4 months, but actually trialing that because at the minute we do quite a lot of manual work with Translate and Adapt in Shopify, and we're actually trying to unify that in a way where maybe we can be a bit more agile and expand that place in that side. So there's loads of apps out there that are great PIMs. Obviously a lot of people use their own ERP systems, but there's quite a few which I can divulge into probably directly.
Okay. Well, I'm Rachel, I'm with Klevu. This is Renata from Klaviyo, Ross from Pangaia, Liam from Vervaunt, and Ben from Shopify. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.